Great, and welcome to this mini workshop on Web of Science. Web of Science is a database that we have available to UC Merced faculty, staff, and students. And Web of Science ended up doing sort of an interface change this summer, which a lot of it is just like the look and feel is different, but they do have some different functionality that they're trying to incorporate. So I'll be highlighting a few of those things in our short time together. I'm going to first of all get us to Web of Science. My favorite way of getting there is normally just going to our databases listing. And from our databases listing, you can search for Web of Science. However, we also have it listed in our popular section just at the bottom, so you can get in it this way. And then one thing that I suspect a lot of us may end up doing going forward is that you can also get to Web of Science just from the UC Library search. So if you search for Web of Science in that large search box on our homepage, it's going to come up as a database. And you just click into the record, and then it will also lead you to the Web of Science core collection. So either of those venues are going to bring you into this database. And the company is Clarivate, so that's what you see in the upper left-hand corner, but it tells us that we're in Web of Science. Right now, I'm also logged in. I'll say a little bit about that. I'm actually going to try closing my session and starting a session without being signed in with like my own personal account. Oh, it just signed me back in again. So that's fine at the moment. So Web of Science is here in the upper left. We also see in this black bar, it says that we are searching in the Web of Science core collection. And you may wonder what that is. And it can be a little bit confusing because if you hit this drop down arrow, it says Web of Science core collection, but then you'll notice that it has all these other collections in it. These are items or other content databases that you can choose individually, and they're going to be searching on this platform. However, what we're going to be looking at today is just the Web of Science core collection. It gives you a little bit of a blurb over here about what it includes, but you can tell that Web of Science content, a lot of it has a really deep back file. So some of these items are going back to 1900. And when you click on Web of Science core collection, or if you were using that drop down, you can come to the right of it, and there's something that says Editions All. And this is actually telling you what is being searched in the Web of Science core collection. Web of Science is a little bit deceiving in that the title suggests it might just be hard sciences, but it is sciences, social sciences. There's an art and humanities index in here, some conference proceedings, book citations, and some other pieces. So this is what you are searching by default when you come into this core collection. You can select or deselect items if you want to. For today, I'm just going to leave all of these selected, and I'm going to come in and just try a search. So I'm going to try adverse childhood experiences and addiction or addictions with truncation. So I'm going to do a search for this. I'm getting about 675 results out of this core collection. Something I'll highlight that is different is that Web of Science is now showing us our search results by relevance. In the past, Web of Science would default to a date, most recent date first. I kind of understand why they did that, but especially when you're getting a lot of results like this, I think the relevance is more useful. But at this point, it looks like a pretty standard results page. Web of Science has kept how they show their publication years, which for this, looks okay. It's actually kind of going in order, and it tells you the number of results. And you could select if you want a specific number of years. I don't love sort of individually selecting. So one thing you may want to do in this database, if you go back to your initial page, is you can add a date range just from the search page. So this is something I try to do more often within this database. So I could say the last 4 years or do some sort of custom date. So I'm going to come back to my search results. This, of course, was a narrowing strategy that brought me down to under 500 items. But let's look a little bit more at some of the filters. In this new interface, they are sort of more visually highlighting some of the pieces that they have for us. So they're telling us, we have these highly cited papers. There's 9 of them. So you could quickly filter to just seeing those and refine it. With any of these filters, you can also X them out. You don't need to retain those. They also have something called hot papers. You're going to get review articles, and they're also tagging things now with early access, open access, and this associated data is kind of interesting. These are going to be articles where they also have a data set associated with them. So I could come to this, click on the title, and then come down and see that this looks like the associated data, and it's linking me out to a repository where it looks like we should have this information. And, oh yes, here we go. It says view data. So it looks like I just have to do another link, and it's taking me out to ICP-SR, and I could download the data. So that's kind of an interesting piece that I think we're seeing more and more in these collections, sometimes getting the data as well. And I think we're seeing more journals requiring data with them. So I'm just backing out a little bit here. So that's just a little bit about our filters. Again, I'm going to X out the associated data so we can see a more complete set. Something else, you can go down to more document types. Web of Science tags things with categories, which can be kind of useful, especially for broader results lists where we have hundreds of results. And you can go to these categories and select something that you want to look at. So sometimes we use this again with students or other researchers because they're like, oh yeah, I'm more in the neurosciences. Let me refine that and see if these are more targeted for me. And then of course, authors, affiliations, which I'm going to say a little bit more about, publication titles, publishers, even the funding agencies. So this can really be a neat place to come to see who has been funding this kind of research in the past. So I'm not going to go through all of these filters, but I do want to come back up here and say a little bit, not so much about this results list, but some of these other features that are given to us at the end of the search box and on the results page. So one of these is an analyze results. So if you have a results list, you can click on this analyze results, and it is going to default to giving you a graphical representation of some different Web of Science categories. And we actually saw this in the filters where it gave us, oh yeah, there's a whole bunch in psychiatry, there's a number in family studies. You do have some options for changing what you're looking at. These visualizations come as tree maps. They also come as bar charts, so you can switch it up that way. I think I'm going to go back to my tree map. But the other thing you can do is you can show these visualizations not just for the Web of Science categories. So you could choose this by authors. Again, this might be more of a faculty piece. Maybe they're looking for these key authors. You can also look by affiliations. This could be kind of interesting. So for this, University of California system is its own affiliation, even though there's also campus affiliations. But this might give you a sense of where are some of the researchers working, or what universities seem to be focused or honed in on this kind of work. So that's kind of interesting to me. You can also see things like publishers. And the other one that I alluded to in the filters, things like funding agencies, which could be really interesting. So if this was along the lines of your kind of research, you could come back in here and say, oh yeah, it's the US Department of Health and Human Services is funding a lot of this kind of research, or the National Institutes of Health. Again, I think this could be really useful for graduate students and faculty. It could also give undergraduate students sort of an insight into the publishing world and what's going on with research. So those are the types of things that you can get with this analyze results. Again, this is going to be a little bit more exciting when you do have a slightly larger result set. If your result set was only 5, this is probably not going to be too exciting. You can also choose and select this citation report. This is trying to give you a little bit more of a picture of all the citing that's going on in these articles that were pulled in this set. So it's giving us this 495. When I tested this, even though it says from 1900, I think it is actually applying my last 5 years filter. So yeah, because that number stayed the same, and it says refined by up here. And then it just gives some information about citing articles, time cited. They give you a number that removes any author's self-citations, and how many times with this whole set on average, how many times it was cited. And this H index means that 29 of the papers in this results set were cited 29 times or more. You can also export this full report. You can download. This is really going to be the image that you can download. And then if you come down, you're actually going to get a table of all the individual articles that were in your results list. And it's giving us the number of citations per year. So this means that it was cited by other articles, and the average per year, and then the total numbers of times that it has been cited by other articles. This has been a real strength of Web of Science, in that this is where you go to often for citation information. And some researchers are doing work where they're looking at their field of study or another field of study and doing some citation analysis. So this isn't going to be super interesting to everybody, but some people do work around this. And it can be a way to also find other research in terms of looking at citations. So let me go back to the results and just say a little bit more about that. Over here on this side, Web of Science does really highlight, okay, this article had 52 items in its reference list, and this is a hyperlink. So you could kind of go backwards and take a look at what those authors were citing themselves. And then this citations was a little bit of what we were looking at. Who has since cited this article? So this was published in June 2018. It looks like 4 others have cited this. Web of Science has this information. Google Scholar is the other big place where people get cited by information. Web of Science did change their language. I can't say I'm in love with this. I wish this was maybe like cited by, but they're just calling it citations. I'm going to click back. I think I was in the 4 citations. No, that wasn't where it is. Maybe the 52. Yeah. So on this one, you'll notice that the Get It at UC button is starting to show in Web of Science, but there's still a lot of UCE links. This is a place where you can click to see if we have full text access. So Web of Science is known as a citation index only, meaning it has information about an article or a book, but the full text does not live in this specific database. So you are always going to see like a Get It at UC button, and or Web of Science has started including sometimes links where you get full text from the publisher. So you can do that as well. So I just clicked on one of those links and it's taking me here and I can download the PDF. So you are always going to have to go another click or two to get the item. I think that sometimes scares people away, but it is really a great and robust search tool and worth taking a look at. And of course, I could have done this with the Get It at UC button as well. So I could come in here. This is going to definitely take me another click once it loads. It's telling me it's in Sage Complete. So this should be taking me where that other link did. So probably, well, definitely our faster pathway was to just go full text at publisher in this case. Okay, so I kind of got back into a reference list there, but this is really helpful information. And you can see here, this still has the UCE links. So this is going to be transformed into the Get It at UC button. Another thing that Web of Science started to include in this new interface is something called Enriched Cited References. This is a little spotty. You're only going to see it on some articles. And I still think it's not fully operational, even when it does show. This button, I always want to click it, but it does nothing on this results page. You have to go into the title, and when you are here, then you can click Enriched Cited References, and it will take you to the graph. This graph, I have seen ones where it has little dots on it to kind of more graphically represent where the citations were used in the article. So this is telling us that there's 33 in the introduction, but again, I should be seeing some dots, only 4 in the materials and methods, 2 in the results. This doesn't feel uncommon, and 21 in the discussion. So again, you get a better sense of where are these citations happening in the article. I think this could be a really cool piece as well to share with undergraduates and helping them also understand scholarly literature and how things might be constructed. And then if you scroll down, you're going to be seeing those citations that they used. But that's definitely a new piece that they are putting in. You can also still export citations to your favorite reference manager tool. If you check mark more than one item and add it to a marked list, this is where you can also create these lists and send multiple citations to your favorite tool. I am currently logged in. I did create an account on Web of Science. I just use my UC Merced email address, but I have a different password. I am currently logged in, and there's just like a little bit of a brief settings piece where you can manage things. But when you are logged in, let me back up. When you come up here, you can also see if you have set up any alerts for yourself. So for instance, I had a search called Decision Making and Emotion, and I have an active alert, which I could change to inactive. And this is where I get notifications through email if there are new articles that meet that search. So I don't have to come back in and rerun the search. And if I come in here, I can also change it from a weekly notification to a monthly or a daily. So let me sort of wrap up by showing how you could do that as well. So I'm just going to come back to this initial search to make it easy. So we looked at these 2 purple buttons. At the far end, there is this Create Alert button. And this is where I'm just going to put ACE search, send me email alerts. And when you create it, it automatically says weekly, etc. Okay, or I could go back to manage my alerts. And so there's a lot of really helpful information in here. They've also done more with related records, which they always used to do, where you could find things that might be also good. They also now have a tab that says you may also like. So there are just some other ways in which you could go about searching that really extend your keyword search, and also ways to really look more and leverage the citations out of Web of Science. So that's not everything in Web of Science, but I hope that gives you a sense of what's in there and some of the little pieces that you might want to try out for yourself. And I keep saying I'm going to wrap this up, but I'm going to show one more thing because I was going to do this. So I did a keyword search here, but I will mention that you may want to search for something like, again, the affiliation. So we called out the University of California affiliation, but if you wanted University of California Merced, you could search for the affiliation like that and hope that you have it, correct, or how they have it in the database. You can also select from their index. So this, if you do a search for something, you can make sure that you are using the same term or phrase that they are. So they brought up University of California Merced, University of California System. So I'm going to add University of California Merced, add to query, and let me go all years. And I'm going to take out what I had initially typed in here. So I'm just using their index term with affiliation and search. Again, this might be something I could see the schools or individuals working in the schools who are wanting to pull information about faculty research could come in here. This is saying that there's over 9,000 items affiliated with people at UC Merced. And this is saying, January 2022, again, you can narrow by a publication year. But this can be kind of interesting. You could also find and search by a specific faculty member and see what shows up in here. Just an aside though, this database is a curated database. It has many scholarly articles, but it's not going to include things like maybe something that they wrote in the conversation or something like that. So it's definitely a curated information source with a focus on scholarly information. But with that, I will wrap it up and thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, I hope that you will be in contact under the library's About Us section. There's Ask a Librarian. We have chat. You can make an appointment. If you have a question for me, feel free to be in touch. My email is sdavidson2, and this is my contact information here as well. So again, thank you all for attending and enjoy Web of Science. Thank you.